Welcome back, everybody. We are going to dive into some tackle and techniques this week. Last couple of weeks we've been doing Project Fork, and I understand that not all of you want to see Project Fork, so we are going to do something different today. And today we are going to do propeller baits. Now, if you want to get into the history and all that kind of stuff with the propeller baits, head over to the Exile Custom Baits channel. We're going to do a deep dive on that one today. It's just happened to work out that way. That's the one that I chose. But we are going to talk about how to fish the propeller bait on this channel today. We are going to discuss what tackle you need, retrieves, all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's get into it. Now, we need to be clear about a couple of things, okay? There are a lot of different types of propeller baits. So the earliest propeller baits, with the research that I've done, that I've been able to find, is early 1900s. And then the earliest definite propeller bait that was marketed was a head-and torpedo. That was in 1920. Now, the difference between early propeller baits and modern propeller baits today is that early propeller baits were, for the majority of the time, other than the devil's horse, were made for throw it out, twitch it, the little propeller at the back or the front, or both, buzzes, spits water, that kind of stuff. Modern baits, like the Berkeley Chopper, like the Whopper Plopper, and there's several other kinds, are more of a cross between a Zara Spook type bait and a buzz bait. So it's constant wind. Can you twitch that type of bait? Yes, you can. Just for ease of explanation today, we're going to call those baits plopper baits. They are propeller baits, but just for the distinction, we're going to call them plopper baits. Good. Now, because we're talking about two distinct different types of baits, unfortunately for this, the majority of the time, you're going to need two different types of rods. So for the modern plopper baits, our 7-foot medium heavy rod is going to be fine, as long as they are not too small. But for standard size ploppers, so say from 90 size and up, that 7-foot medium heavy rod is going to get it done. And you are going to be able to use whatever you want to use tackle-wise other than fluorocarbon. So spinning rod, braid with a mono leader, casting rod, braid, mono leader, or straight mono, or straight braid if the water's dirty or if you're fishing in some thick stuff, which these baits don't really lend themselves to, but there are a couple of occasions where straight braid would be beneficial. Good. So, that's the rod covered. The reel, not really important. I prefer a slower reel when I'm using propeller style baits. Both for the earlier baits and the modern baits, I like to fish them fairly slowly. So even with a plopper bait, I like a nice steady wind. So if I don't have to think about it and I'm just winding on a bait caster like this, and it's 6.2 to 1, 6.5 to 1, somewhere around there, I don't have to think about it. Fire it out, wind it in. It's as simple as that. Good. So line, with the older baits, you may want to go with kind of 12 to 15 pound mono, something like that. Most of them are very light. We'll have a look at it when we go to the close-ups. But with the modern plopper baits, the majority of them have got some weight to them. So you can go with a heavier line as long as you can fire it out there. And depending on what type of cover you're fishing in, you can fish it on 40-pound braid if that's what makes you happy. But the lighter baits, you're not going to get away with that. The older baits, definitely not. So tackle, and then for the lighter baits, something like 6'9" to a 7-foot medium moderate, something like that, where it's the rod is more forgiving. And it loads slower and that type of stuff, so it's on the retrieve, take up a bit of slack. We'll get into the retrieves a little bit later on. But something like that, and 12 to 15 pound mono, somewhere around there for those. You'll understand when we go to the close-ups. So that kind of takes care of the tackle that's needed. It's not a tremendously difficult bait to fish, particularly not the new baits. They are very much a chunk and wind bait. It becomes a lot more about casting accuracy than it does about the retrieve. Let's put it that way. So it's a pretty straightforward bait. Anybody can fish it. Parents, I will just add, most propeller style baits, whether the old ones or the new ones, trebles. So when you're teaching your kids to fish these baits, they need to look behind them when they cast, be aware of what's going on. Maybe the best way to do it would be to get them, if you're fishing on a boat, get them on the back deck of the boat so that they are completely away from everybody and facing side to side on the boat, not front to back, because they will hit the outboard motor with it. It's just one of those things. It happens. So let them face side to side and let them just fire away and get used to it. If it makes you super uncomfortable, take the trebles off and just put single hooks on them whilst they're learning. It's another option. It's a job that takes literally 2 minutes and it'll make your life a lot safer. And yes, they're going to lose fish with the single hooks, but it'd be safer for them whilst they're learning to fish them. So folks, just be aware of that when you're teaching your kids this bait. These, when they go in, they stick properly and it hurts. Okay, good. So I think what we should do here now, let's go to the close-ups. We're not going to do a map today. When I come back, we'll talk about retrieves and where you can throw them. I'm working on something new for the maps, and I'm not quite ready to introduce it. So let's do that for now. So let's go to the close-ups. Have a look at a few different types of baits. I don't have all of them. I'll put some pictures up on screen of the other ones that are available to us. There's stacks of them, guys. Really, there are. But I've got my favorites here and a couple that I've painted up that I like, that I enjoy using. And then I'll put the rest of them or some of them up on the screen for you to have a look at. Okay, close-ups. Here we go. Right on. Here we go. Okay. So let's look at the basic construction of an old school style propeller bait, and then we'll look at the construction of a newer proper style bait. Okay, they're both very similar. There's not a lot of difference. All of them float to the best of my knowledge. So you've got this body here that floats, line tie at the front, some form of propeller at the back, usually 2 hook hangers. Okay. It's not a complicated bait, guys. So what would happen is the line would be tied on there, pulled or wound in a forward direction with the propeller space. If we look at the proper style bait, it's exactly the same thing. Okay? Propeller at the back, 2 treble hooks, line tie at the front. Right. It's really not very complicated. So couple of different variations, and then I'll put a couple other ones up on the screen. This is quite an old one. This was given to me by a friend. This is, I think it's called a Rebel Jumping Frog. And this is my favorite propeller bait. For whatever reason, I do not know why. I cannot explain it. I have several others. I've got hidden torpedoes, tiny torpedoes, all of those things. I've got the Lucky Craft ones I'm going to show you in a minute. This bait, just why. And it's an OG. This is an old lure. I have a couple of them. I only have 2 left, so this is an old guy. Right. This is the Lucky Craft one. You can see it's a lot more refined. It's prettier. The colors are more vivid. It's got a little pin thing on its tail. I don't know if it makes a difference. But it's the Lucky Craft version. Exact same bait. Let's see if we can get it to focus on what the name of this thing is. Right, so I will, when I've got my glasses on, I'll put that up on the screen. Then we get to the plopper style baits. So the first one was this style of plopper. I think Larry Dahlberg was the main guy that was involved in the making of that thing. Beautiful bait. This is one that I painted, and I foiled this bait as well, just so that it was more chrome, and painted it myself. So that's one of mine. I didn't make the bait, I only painted it. This is the smaller one. Painted this one as well. You can see size-wise it's a lot smaller, but the body is big, deeper, more like a crankbait than a surface bait. And then this guy, which I painted up for pike, a bit of a strange-looking cat. Actually looks like a little pike, but same deal. It's got the plopper blade on the back. All right, so what about different colors? What is it that we need to be looking for? I like to keep it simple with this, guys. I like bone. Bone is probably my favorite all-time color for topwater. It's just one of those things. I am a simple person when it comes to that type of thing. So I like bone and I like black. So there's black back there, a little bit of yellow on its belly. But there's definitely a time and place for either a silver or chrome colored back, maybe with a dark back or a blue back, maybe a little bit of yellow on the belly, something like that. And then something a bit more strange, which is a bit more of a reaction type color. This would called clown under normal circumstances. This is a Japanese bait. I know the name begins with an N, but I can't. Maybe it's Nigiri or something like that. Anyway, it's a clown color. It's a reaction type color. Looks like nothing. I don't know what it's supposed to represent, but almost every hard bait company in the world has some or other variation of clown, which is chartreuse on the back and a red head. I can't explain it, guys. I'm not even going to try and explain it. This one is the same color as a frog, white belly, green and black on the back. So let's just say if you have no idea what you're doing, buy a black one and a white one, or a black one and a bone one if you like. It's always good to have some or other type of fishy type color. A very good one in these older school style propeller baits to have would be a bluegill pattern. I have a bluegill pattern in the Lucky Craft one. I just didn't bring it out with me. And then a reaction type color as well. Not that black and white aren't reaction type colors, but something like the clown. Or maybe black back, black stripes, white body, something like that. That's probably the most famous devil's horse color. White body, black stripes, black back. Something along those lines, guys. Keep it simple. Top waters, we don't have to make it complicated. Remember, a lot of the time, the fish are only seeing that part there. So if I had to repaint this lure, which I will do one day when it gets completely smashed to pieces, I will probably end up painting a similar pattern to what's on here now, but I would probably put an indicator color there, maybe a little bit of chartreuse on the chin, or a little bit of orange on the chin like this guy here. Just a little indicator color. Some of the older school type baits, these two in particular, you can see if we can get that to focus properly there. You can see there's almost like a little cup mouth there. So what that does is when you pop it forward, the blade will spin, this will spit, and you'll get an erratic side-to-side walking action, or an S action. The proper style baits, as we're going to discuss later in the retrieves, very much a chunk and wind type style. You can pop them if you do it carefully, but some of the time when you're fishing with proper style baits, when you do that, the line ends up around the hook. Okay, so like you saw in the close-ups, lots of things to consider, guys. There's a lot to consider. Lots of different shapes, we'll get into the retrieves, but the different shapes affect how you retrieve the bait. So what time of year would we consider throwing this bait? We'll get into where after we've spoken about what time of year. You know, I've had some success throwing propeller style baits in the cooler months and I'm just going to say cooler months because obviously wherever you are in the world, it's going to vary. But the majority of the time, the best success that I've been able to get with propeller baits is just on the pre-spawn, when the males start moving up and looking around before the females move up, and then through the summer and then into the autumn or the fall. And the fall months for me have probably been the best months for throwing propeller baits. I find that, I know this is going to sound a little bit strange, but in the fall months the fish are looking up and they're hunting actively. They know the winter is coming, particularly in places where you get a super cold winter. And they're hunting hard, and this thing buzzing over their head, it pisses them off, and they want to kill it. And they want to eat it. And they want to eat as much as they possibly can before the winter gets there. Okay, good. Right, let's talk about some weather conditions for this type of bait, old and new. I am not sure that weather conditions play a massive role with propeller style baits. I will say with the older style baits, Devil's Horse, that jumping frog, that rebel jumping frog that I showed you, the Lucky Craft bait, and a couple of the other baits, I've done really well with them when it's either super overcast and gloomy or high bright skies in the middle of the day. I can't tell you why that is. I don't know. It's one of those baits that I always have in the boat. I don't always have it tied on, but I always have it in the boat. And here comes the black magic thing again, guys. You just get a feeling sometimes when you're either throwing a popper or a spook where fish are coming up and they're nosing it and they're not committing it to it, or maybe you're fishing around bluegill beds and bass are hunting bluegill and you're throwing a big top water over the top of the bluegill beds and the bass will come up and they'll swirl on the bait, but they won't eat it. And I'll tie on a propeller bait, particularly in a fishy type color, and for whatever reason, and I think it may be because in the warmer times of the year, the bluegill do feed closer to the surface, and what will happen is that it goes from them coming up and nosing a bait to they just come up and decimate the bait. It's not a question of, I'm just going to come up and have a look and see what this is. They come up and they just club it. Absolutely club the bait. There's no mistake. We'll get into the bite a little bit later. So there are definitely times of year and different conditions where the different types of bait work better. The plopper style baits, I found my best success with the plopper style baits has been in water that is more stained. Not necessarily dirty. I'm not talking about chocolate milk water. You will catch them in chocolate milk water on a plopper style bait. But when the water's just got just a little bit more stain to it, I found that the plopper baits, as opposed to using the older propeller style baits, have been first prize. It's when they can't get quite as good a look at it as they can with the older style baits. Or maybe there's a little bit of a chop on the water, just a little ripple on the water. Those older style propeller baits, they are not great when you get anything more than that kind of chop on the surface, just a little bit more than a breeze. They become completely ineffective. But if you should go to the plopper style bait, when you get more of a chop, where that bait is doing this on the surface and behind it, causing all kinds of commotion, and that wind is activating the bait fish, and the bait fish are acting the bass, and the fish are becoming active. For me, that's when the chopper style bait or plopper style bait has been most effective. And when I say most effective, I mean you can go through bite windows where it's every cast. Literally every single cast. And it's magical. It's very similar in that way to when you get a good frog bite going, where you're going down a bank, you find a certain patch of weeds or whatever the case is, and you start firing that frog out there, and it's every cast you're getting a hit. It can be the same with the plopper style baits. And a lot of the stuff that I've watched online says you can only throw proper style baits in this type of water. You can only throw propeller style baits in this type of water. The old style propeller baits are not a big fish bait. Guys, let me tell you, the Smithwick Devil's Horse was created for Florida. Quite a few big fish in Florida. Quite a few. Particularly the lake where it was created for, which from what my research says Okeechobee. A couple of big fish in that lake. Right, where do we throw them? Well, and this is primarily the reason that I haven't gone to the map. It's more situational than it is where you're actually going to throw them, okay? They do not like weeds at all. Treble hooks and weeds, they just don't get on unless you're throwing a lipless. So what's the deal then? Well, straight banks, bluff banks, around jetties and docks, anywhere where you've got an open water situation. If you've got submerged or emergent weed and you can fish it over the top, it is lethal. Either one of those baits would be lethal. If the water was clearer, I would go with the older propeller style baits. If the water's got some stain, I would go with the proper style baits. Me personally. That doesn't mean don't throw the proper style baits if the water's clean. If that's what you've got tied on, throw that thing. If you've got emergent weed coming towards the surface and it hasn't reached the surface yet, or it's maybe hydrilla that's submerged and there's water above it, throw that thing. It'll get those fish to come up out of the grass and pound that bait, which is super exciting. And a lot of the time, from personal experience, I found that propeller style baits, if you're having a really, really slow day and you're fishing crystal clear water and you can't get the fish to commit, they want to eat a moving bait, but they won't eat it. They don't want to eat a jerk bait because it's too warm. Whatever the case might be, and you just can't find that right mix of ingredients to get them to commit to the bait. And you guys all know what I'm talking about. You know, in those dark days of summer where they just don't want to move, try an old school propeller bait, any one of them. And for whatever reason, it gets them angry, and they will bite it. All right. Let's talk about the retrieves, and let's talk about the bite. The retrieves with the old school propeller baits, I like to keep it simple. A bait like a Devil's Horse, which is an old school bait, yes, throw it out there and wind it like you would with a plopper. Absolutely. The difference between that and the plopper is that the Devil's Horse and all the other old school propeller baits, torpedoes, that jumping frog that I showed you, the Lucky Craft baits, the G-splashes, all of those things, when you twitch them, they dart from side to side very erratically. They spit water. It just creates a commotion. The problem with the plopper, when you're trying to do that wind and then stop and then jerk, 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 the problem that the plopper has is that occasionally it will move so aggressively that your line will get caught on the hooks. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen with older style baits. It absolutely does happen, okay? But with the plopper baits in particularly, and I think it's because they're a lot heavier than the old baits, they will zigzag side to side, walk the dog, do that thing, and it's so aggressive. And the tail, obviously with the tail buzzing and whatever, it makes it more aggressive, that the line simply gets stuck in the hooks. So for the proper style baits, my preferred way to fish them is chunk and wind. However, what I would do, particularly if I see a fish following, is I will either slow down or speed up and then just give it a couple of soft jerks like that. So it's just moving, side to side. And sometimes that will entice fish into biting. Absolutely. Old style baits, the bite can be super violent. I've had fish, like with a frog bite, come out of the water and land on top of the bait to kill it or to kill it or to eat it. Proper style baits, they usually just come up from behind and they shark it. It looks like a killer whale eating a seal. It's the way it is. Or they come from underneath and they shark it. Same thing. Looks like a killer whale eating a seal. With the older style propeller baits, particularly if you're fishing them in clear water, and if you're fishing them very slowly and you're being methodical, say you're fishing around bushes or you're fishing around bluegill beds or something like that, sometimes what will happen is, and we've spoken about it before in previous videos, we call it the look-away bite, where you'll just be fishing and looking around like this, and you look back, and that thing is gone. They've just come up gently from below, they've sipped it in, and they're gone. And with both style of baits, guys, we do not need to be putting the steel to them, okay? Wind down the slack and you just lean into them and the hooks will go in. They're either going to go in or they're not. It's just the way it is with this type of bait. And I would say a solid 7.5 to 8 times out of 10, the hooks are going in. You know, on the modern proper baits, they've got nice big hooks on them. And with them having 2 treble hooks on them, there's a very good chance they're going to stick. The older ones, they've got smaller treble hooks. But something to be aware of is just to check how sharp the hooks are before you start throwing it, particularly if they've been lying in the box for a while and you haven't been using them. Hooks do dull up. And like we've said in many other videos, it's the easiest thing in the world, guys. Just keep a little tackle box like this with a couple of different size spare trebles in them. You run that thing over your nail and it doesn't stick, either take a file to it, or if you're not comfortable using a file, take that thing off, put a new hook on, off you go. It's as simple as that. They must have sharp hooks to work effectively, particularly if the fish are very aggressive. You want that when they're hitting it that fast, you need that hook to stick when the fish hits it. So that's kind of it. There's not a lot to this bait. It's just a very interesting bait and it's a very old bait. Then obviously the new modern style of it's just a reinvention of the wheel with a few more fancy things to it. And don't get me wrong, I love proper baits. I've caught some big fish on them. To me, I find it's like throwing a buzz bait, but it's easier. Primarily because I suck at throwing buzz baits. So this type of bait for me it's a win-win. The only thing, obviously, the downside for this style of baits is that you can't throw them around surface weed. So that's where you would go to the frog or you would go to a buzz bait or something like that. Other than that, you can't miss. It's a great bait. I hope you all get out there and learn how to fish propeller baits. I hope you catch lots of big fish on them now. In the US, we're going into the spring, so it's almost time to start throwing them. South Africa, most places in South Africa, you can throw them year-round. We don't have ice and things like that on the water like you do in America. So I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Again, this week on Exile Custom Baits channel, we're doing a deep dive into propeller baits. You're going to just see, I don't make them, I paint them. But you're going to see some baits that I've painted. And we're going to get into the weeds a little bit about the history of the bait and that type of thing. Short video, under 10 minutes. Just interesting facts about propeller baits. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time.